Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Do you remember those classic Schoolhouse Rock educational videos? There were so many fun and important lessons, but the one of note for us right now is the one about conjunctions. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? The purpose of conjunctions is to conjoin. Conjunctions are like bridges connecting one idea to another. That is why we are supposed to be taught that in proper English we do not start sentences with conjunctions. As a conjunction, as the first or last word of a sentence is like a bridge to nowhere. And thus, it especially does not seem to make good sense to start a new book with a conjunction. This week's Torah portion, however, which is actually the start of the second book of the Torah, as we finished reading the first book last week, for some reason, this new book starts with and. Ve'eleh Shmot. And these are the names. It does not start with these are the names. It starts with and these are the names. And it does so for good reason. Starting this second book with and serves to indicate a continuity with that which preceded it. Shemot is not a book separate from Bereshit, but Shemot is a continuation of our story from Bereshit. Bereshit takes us from creation well into Egypt, from Adam to Yosef. Last week, the book of Bereshit ended with the passing of Yosef. Shemot begins from there. And why is Shemot called Shemot? What's in a name? The Hebrew word Shemot, the second word of this parsha, means names. The first reading of this book this week begins, and these are the names. Shemot begins with listing the names and number, magnitude of our ancestors, Yaakov, his sons, and their families who had gone to Egypt. This parsha shares how there were many of us, and we continued to grow and become many, many more. Bnai Yisrael paru v'yishertzu v'yirbu. The Israelites were fertile and prolific. We jump ahead into the future from the foundation of Bereshit, and we now face the struggle in Egypt. Leadership can change, and our situation can so greatly change. Oh, how poignant. Yosef has passed, and generations have passed. Close to 300 years have passed from Yosef to Moshe. The Pharaoh who knew Yosef, who put Yosef into a position of power, and who treated our Jewish ancestors at least as well as he treated others, has now since passed. As this parsha poignantly notes, Vayakam melech hadash al Mitzrayim, a new king arose over Egypt. Asher lo yada et Yosef, he did not know Yosef. He had no loyalty for and even had no care for Bnei Yisrael. He saw our numbers and was concerned. Am Bnei Yisrael Ravi atzum mimenu. The Israelite people are much too numerous for us. He decided, let us deal shrewdly with them. Nichach malo, so that they may not increase. Hen yirbeh. He was afraid that in the event of war, we may join their enemies and fight against them. Ve'ala min haaretz, and arise from the ground. Ve'asimu alav sarei misim, lema'an anoto basivlotam. So they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. Our numbers, though, continued to increase, and he dealt more harshly and ultimately put out the edict to kill our newborn sons. And, of course, much transpires from there. Moses was born. Instead of being killed, he was saved. He was raised in the palace. He saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite, and he stepped in. He saw two Israelites fighting, and he stepped in. He fled Egypt and ended up in Midian. He saw cruel shepherds mistreating women at the well, and he stepped in. He was invited to the home of their father, Ruel HaYitro. He fell in love with Zipporah and married her. They had a son, Gershom. Moses' life has nicely stabilized and been going well in Midian. But back in Egypt, under a new Pharaoh, life for the Israelites, as bad as it had been, was getting even worse. And the Israelites were groaning under the bondage and cried out, Bnei Yisrael min ha'avodah vayizaku. And God heard their moaning, Vayishma Elohim, with Moses having again and again shown his intolerance for injustice. God catches his attention with the burning bush. While tending his flock, Moses saw, he was drawn to, at Har Elohim Chorevah, at the mountain of God, Horeb. Moses saw the blazing bush that was not consumed, and God called to him, Moshe, Moshe. And Moshe answered, Hineni, here I am. Ultimately, with God's guidance and assistance, Moses returned to Egypt in an effort to free our ancestors from our slavery in Egypt. Of course, much transpires here, and this parsha culminates when, and I shall read a little for you here from the end of this parsha. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, the Lord said to Moses, Ata tireh, you shall soon see. Asher e'eseh leFaro, what I will do to Pharaoh. Ki biyad chazakah yishalchem, he shall let them go because of a greater might. Ubiyad chazakah, indeed because of a greater might. Yigarshem miartso, he shall drive them from his land. And that and more is all in this Shabbat's Torah reading. Wow. Yes, that is quite a lot for one Shabbat. It is not that this all happened in a day or a week or even a year. This one reading covers quite a number of years, but this is the reading for this week. And we certainly can learn a lot in a week. And if we so choose, we can certainly do a lot in a week. That is where the book of Shmot and this Parsha Shmot begin. Our numbers in Egypt are growing and our names are growing. From Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, being Yaakov, Yisrael's family, we have grown to be Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, being a nation. Am Yisrael Chai. That is how this book begins. The book of Shemot, though, is also known by other names. It is also known as Sefer Yetziat Mitzrayim, as it is the book of the departure from Egypt. Similarly, the Greek-speaking Jews of Alexandria called this book Exodus Aegyptus. That name was then adopted similarly by those speaking Latin, and that name was then simplified by various European cultures and also in English to be simply referred to as Exodus, the book of Shemot. Our journey of our Exodus takes place in three main settings. First, our struggle for our liberation in Egypt. Second, our journey from slavery to Sinai. And third, our being at Sinai. The book of Shemot takes us approximately through a time period of close to a century and a half. From the passing of Yosef and the rise of Moshe to the final reading over a couple of months from now of the construction of the tabernacle. This Shabbat, we start this new book of the Torah, which should lead us to ponder the new books that we can begin and write in our own lives as well. In the week that follows, on Wednesday, we will have Yom Kippur Katan, a special chance to make right our wrongs. Then the next day, on Thursday, we will have Rosh Chodesh and begin the new month of Shabbat. Such special new opportunities that can bring as well. Shemot may begin with and, conjunction, junction, as it is important to note that our present connects with our past. But we can write a new book here. A new book, a new cleansing, a new beginning, a new month. It is up to us what decisions we will make. What will we write with our lives? What path will we travel? What will we do? What impact will we make? What life will we live? And ultimately, what future will we help bring forth? And I will leave you with that to ponder as I wish you Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shmot Shalom, Shabbat Mivarchim Shalom.